hunt them down. Do not stop until they are found. You do not know pain. You do not know fear. You will taste Aussie flesh. And taste it they did as Taysom Hill and Professor Chaos feasted down under this week, scoring the most points in the league so far this year. In fact, they scored enough with just their tight end and kicker alone to get the W, so the rest was just overkill. Where's the mercy rule when you need one? Welcome in once again to the dungeon of the Doctors of Doom, where I am your league-leading host, Alex the Shark Sparks, and joining me this week is my streaking co-host, Mitch Almost There Black, and the final talking head of our crew, Vinny Hold the Line Santucci. Say hello to all the Delvers out there listening, fellas.
Hello.
Delvers, we're trying out a new one today. I like it.
So our total number of views went back up, which is a pleasant surprise. Didn't expect that to happen. Our views have gone back up to where they were before, which is great. And we got some feedback from the listeners about some things we talked about last episode and things they want us to talk about in the future. However, not a single person voted on what we should call them, which is what we asked them to do. So I'm still just kind of making that up as we go along. I've tried a couple of different things, trying out Delvers this week. Maybe eventually someone will chime in, and at this point, one vote will win it. So right now, Mitch's vote from last week about Mitchell's babies order it was might be winning what I call him. So.
Oh my God, this is how like you end up with like a team called the Trash Pandas, is like letting Mitch pick something like that.
Yeah, probably. All right, fellas. Anything you want to discuss from the jump? If not, I will start it off with the Around the League.
No, let's do it. Look at that. Wait, round of applause. Round of applause.
Yeah.
Round of applause.
All right, boys and girls. So let's get started here with the Around the League breakdown. We'll start with my game as we always do, just because I'm logged in as me. Starting to sound like a broken record here, but Dad once again starts Algier, and that cost him this week. This week, Brian Robinson was actually playing, so he definitely should have started him. Now, he was here visiting me, well, not visiting me, but he was here in Alabama. He had something going on. He realized after it was too late that he didn't start Robinson because I think Robinson was like the Thursday night game. So he texted me that it was an early Christmas gift, and sure enough, the 12 points that Robinson got on the bench here would have been enough to get him the tie, which is very relevant because, as you'll see with the division standings, that is potentially going to matter. That's really all I got for my game, other than the fact that, once again, as you guys talked about in chat, the Josh Downs roulette, I'd love to get off this roller coaster with him. I continue my trend of picking up the best guy off waivers and then not starting him. Although I did start Bo Nix over Cousins, which was huge because that definitely won me the game. But woo, yeah, it'd be nice if I could make the right call there. But yeah, Dad went the wrong way at running back again, although this week I think it's just because he forgot because of a Thursday night game, which was unfortunate for him, but super fortunate for me. Any comments on this game before we move to the next one?
I think the Robinson injury is the only difference for your father this year. Otherwise, he'd probably be closer to 10-1 or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Yeah, no.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I thought this one was a little bit spicier, kind of going into some of those afternoon games, and it didn't really ever come to. I mean, Bo Nix going off for 36 points was a miracle move by you. I always love that, every morning at around what time, Mitch, would you say, like 12:30, 1 o'clock, we get a text from Alex talking about something he did, lost him the game, or a play in something that lost him a game. So I actually thought you were losing all week until I looked and saw that there was like no way that Nolan had a chance to win. So
I was until Bo Nix. Keep in mind, Bo Nix was in the afternoon game, right? So during the morning games, I've got Aaron Jones, who does nothing, and the backup gets the touchdown. Tillman does nothing. Kraft got 0 fantasy points. Like, it was not looking good for me in the morning. Also, Derrick Henry, like Love and Henry both scored on like their first drives of the game. Cooper Kupp scored a touchdown in his first drive of the game. Like, Dad was off to a very significant lead, and I had to claw my way back into it. But yeah, moving right along. Speaking of text messages that don't go your way, Vinny texted me at halftime of the Bengals game saying that Cameron has coached himself out of the playoffs, which, first of all, I'm not sure what that comment meant because I don't know who you thought he should have started. We'll get to that in a second. But you forgot that there was still a second half of garbage time and Mixon yet to play. Combining Burrow and Mixon, Cameron wins in a blowout as the second highest scorer this week. So you jumped the gun a little bit. But yeah, this team is peaking. I would say at the right time, but they've got a ways to go if they're going to make the playoffs. But I mean, they're peaking here. They're very top heavy. But I mean, I said that Burrow might be an MVP candidate. I don't think he's going to win it because they keep losing. But he's sure as hell playing like an MVP. And then Mixon, same thing. If Mixon hadn't missed that time, Mixon's playing unbelievable. But yeah, Vinny, out of curiosity, what did you think he should have started that you thought was like the bad call? Because like the way you like, obviously, look, you had no idea that Burrow was going to pop off. But like, even if Burrow doesn't pop off, like I'm sure you weren't saying he should have not started Burrow. So who was it you were thinking on his bench?
For clarity, it was just I was just saying like Miles and Cam losing this week played themselves out of the playoff race.
Gotcha.
Because if either one of them ends up with 6 losses, even if they win out, they would have to have both Adam and I lose every single one of our games because I don't think either one's catching us on points for. So Adam and I would theoretically have to both go 0-3. They would have to win out. So I was just merely saying that by them losing this week, because last week the whole conversation in this was, wow, our whole division is up for grabs and all 4 people are players. And then 1 week later, Miles and Cameron were out of it. Now, to defend my comment at that point in time, let's see. Burrows had 4 points at halftime, so that would put him 30.
And Mixon hadn't played yet, so that's 62 points down from where he is right now.
So 62. So what does that put him at?
Halftime.
Yeah. So
50. What is that? 54.
54 points. Yeah.
So in a game and a half of 2 players, he scored 62 points. So, at that point in time, he was losing 92-54. I thought, okay, Burrow maybe scores another 10, 15 points. That's 69. And there's no way that, in my head, was Mixon going off for 25 points. But, here we are. And obviously, I was the motivation that Yakovlev needed this week. So good for them.
Speaking of, I will talk about one coaching decision he made. He finally cuts Eddie Pinheiro, which I find hilarious because for those who don't know, after this week's games, you know who the most accurate kicker in NFL history is now? Eddie Pinheiro, because of all the misses by Justin Tucker. Justin Tucker is no longer the most accurate kicker in NFL history. Pinheiro is, but it's okay, guys, because Cameron is still rostering Harrison Butker, who's on IR, and the best part of Butker being on IR, guess when he's eligible to return? Week 15, which means Cameron is convinced that not only is he going to make the playoffs, that it's worth rostering a kicker that cannot play until the fantasy playoffs just to start him in his first game back. That's some either crazy faith that he's got going on, or I don't know what's happening. You know what I mean?
I went back because this team, so Mixon now is currently the number 1 fantasy run back average. And so I was going back and looking at it, and in hindsight, if you look at the weeks Cameron didn't have Mixon for 4 games or whatever, I went back and looked at those games, and luckily it didn't make a difference in any of his results. Either Pollard had gotten significant points, like 18 fantasy points, because Pollard was a world beater at the beginning of the year, or Cameron got beat so badly that he lost 131 to 111 to me, and then there was another one that was really bad. So it ends up not costing him, but in hindsight, if Cameron has the number 1 fantasy running back for a month more of the season, I was wondering if that translated into a win or loss. It didn't seem to, but 6-5 with the number 1 fantasy running back and the way Burrow's playing. So Cameron's team has 9 touchdowns this week. It's really hard to beat any team that has 9 TDs on their fantasy roster on any given Sunday.
And you know what's crazy? 9 TDs, but 7 of those are between 2 players. But the crazy thing about Mixon, so if you don't count week 2, because this is the week he got hurt, right? So he didn't get to finish this game. Now 9 for 25 isn't a good stat line, but if he plays the whole game, ends up with his normal 25 carries, he might still break the century mark. So I'm not going to count this because he got hurt in the middle of the game. He's gone over 100 yards in every game but 1 this season.
Yeah, he's the number 1 running back.
That's insane. He is just absolutely crushing it. So
that's why I'm hoping Cameron gets left behind now in that division. It's scary. It's either I have to play Hurts or I have to play Lamar or I'm going to have to play the number 1 running back. So it's that's, or even Derrick Henry if that happens. But it seems to me I'm probably going to play someone from Vinny's division. So it's that's what I'm guessing. So it's I'm going to have to play Hurts, who Lamar or Mixon. And it's going to be tough.
Do you know what that means? Alex, that means that Mitchell is saying that he's winning his division. I don't know if you caught on to that or not.
I've been saying that since week 0, though. Week 1.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Not a lot to say here. Phoenix get the dub over the Serial Killers. A couple things to comment. I was going to complain that my history of making terrible trades has continued because Kirk Cousins has been awful fantasy-wise the 2 weeks I've had him. The first week I had him, he threw for over 300 yards but no touchdowns. He's been awful fantasy-wise. However, Sylvie got 0 points out of the player I traded her this week. Although, to be fair, he had 9 yards to the 0 yards my tight end got. So he is beating my tight end. So technically I still traded her the better tight end of the two. But yeah, she's still rolling with the Falcons. And the Falcons had a bad game, so she didn't have a great game. She's also still starting Caleb Williams, who, as I shared with you guys, they have more yards punting this year than passing, which is an impressive feat to pull that off. But don't worry, though. Trevor Lawrence still on the bench, still here. He's expected back maybe week 13, but she's still rostering him from that amazing trade she made with Vinny. Does she even have anyone left on the team that she got from you in that trade? Because she traded away McLaurin, and she has Lawrence who hasn't played. I don't remember who the third one was. So, because she dropped Zamir White. Yeah, so you're just over here. You just made out like a bandit, honestly. Like, and your team's so much worse if you don't make that trade. Like, I'm not nearly as worried about Vinny's team if he doesn't have that trade. So,
well, just for the record, I mean, this was like what, week 2? I would have been very, very aggressively pursuing a running back and would have been making stronger plays off waivers for running backs, if that weren't the case, right? So I don't know if we could look at it in a microscope that like I would have to be starting Ray Davis every week, but yes, my team would be considerably worse.
But it's cool though because you still got Brooks, so you know.
I'm going to have to agree with Vinny on this one. He probably does have a value. If he wins the wild card on points forward, then the Jacobs thing probably comes in and helps him the most. But if it doesn't come down to that situation at the end, I'm saying the value of the running backs that you could have gotten off waivers or a different trade or anything this year, yeah. I mean, I get Jacobs is probably 5 points higher above the replacement, but I don't know if that's going to do a whole lot of affecting.
All right, moving right along.
Wait, hold on. I do want to say the Titans, she usually starts the Falcons D, and she called ahead of time that the Falcons were going to get shellacked by the Broncos. I didn't see that coming. I think in the Pick'em League, I picked the Titans, and she dropped the Falcons and started the Titans, and I think that gave her 5 extra points. So that's not a bad coaching decision there.
Yeah, I mean she is moving away from the Falcons, but I mean, and she didn't start Mooney this week. Like she made the read there, which. You know,
he made the read that the Broncos were going to destroy the Falcons. It just didn't really help her fantasy team.
Yeah,
and Mostert too Mostert looks like, sorry to cut you off, Eddie. Mostert looks like he's been devalued to the third running back. So almost like having Josh Jacobs right now would be nice for her team.
Yeah. No, the only thing I wanted to say is I really thought that the parity of my team this week was pretty funny. I know everybody else doesn't really notice as much as I do, but the last couple weeks, I have gotten 0 production out of anybody except for my quarterback and defense. It has been abysmal. Like I think Hurts has scored like 30 plus and I can barely break 80. And then this week I get a bad Hurts week, still get a good defense week. But I was like laughing when I was watching Montgomery, Jacobs, Judy just go off because I'm like, oh, this is fun. Like fantasy's fun when you actually get touchdowns from anybody between running back to tight end.
Yeah, that was also a good pick. I think Judy, Downs, and there was a couple others I can't remember right now. But I stuck with Waddle. I don't know why I refuse to play the waivers for these wide receivers, but you guys keep picking the right ones, and I keep picking the wrong ones.
Yeah, but I keep picking the right ones to put them on my bench. All right, moving on.
And put them on your bench. Well, don't stop putting them on your bench and tell me which one you're going to pick. Let me know.
So I addressed this one in the intro. Matt with the highest score of the season here. I didn't talk about this. So Matt with his just his kicker and tight end, he beats Austin. With just his kicker, tight end, and St. Brown as 3 top players, he beats 5 other teams this week. That's how much his team popped off, even though his running backs combined for only 12 points, right? So, but his team popped off. He even started the wrong QB. He had more points on the bench at QB, more points on the bench at wide receiver. Like, he made the wrong call on who to start and still had the highest score of the week. So, yeah, not much to say here other than, Austin's team, unfortunately, just it looks like a trash can fire. There were a couple weeks where we thought we had some hope for him. Ironically, I lost to him, which is just it's brutal being one of his wins this year. But he's just, once again, he just gets no TDs. Like his guys just don't draw end zone. He got 2 touchdowns this week, but his guys just don't. Well, I mean, these guys got no yards either. But like normally he gets a lot of yards and no TDs, and this week it was a little yards and no TDs. So just more of the same
It's
for
just
Austin's team, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's just funny. Garrett Wilson's value keeps getting nerfed every year because, like, last year it was like, oh my God, he's getting Rodgers, and I drafted him, and I was like, I can't believe you guys left Garrett Wilson in the third round, and he just doesn't have Aaron Rodgers all year. And then this year he looked to be okay somewhere in like week 4, 5, 6. Oh, there you go. Yeah, somewhere
Yeah,
in there. He looked to be,
weeks 5 through 9, you were happy with him, right?
and then they get Devontae Adams. What week 9 or 8, right?
So yeah, they had
So
Devontae. One of these games was with Devontae, but then yeah, after
yeah,
that,
that's it.
and it's not
Yeah.
that he's not getting the targets. So like he's getting like this game he had 23 targets. Like even these low point games, 8, 9, 11. Like he's being targeted. It's just I don't just Rogers doesn't have it anymore. Like the balls, like there's a difference between a target and a quality target. I just think the balls aren't getting near him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the other thing with Hill is I had Hill since Laporta. I saw the signs with Laporta early in the season, early on, like week 2 or 3, and I had Taysom Hill. I think I dropped him 1 week, but picked him back up. So I had Hill the whole time, and then week 6 comes around, week 7, I was like, okay, this is my chance to grab Hawkinson. Do I drop Hill and play Hawkinson? Well, then the last 2 weeks that Laporta's been out, Hill's had 32, and like I think 2 weeks ago he had like 18. So it's like if I just would have kept Hill and not played Hawkinson, I would have had these points. But instead, I put him on the waivers, and Matt picks up Hill the 1 week. It's just like I can't. I'm not. And then last year I struggled with Komet, calling the weeks Komet had good weeks or not all year. It's just I can't. I'm the worst tight end caller ever. Like it's like, oh, I have Laporta and Hawkinson, so I have no tight ends between those two. But any other year, if you have Laporta or Hawkinson, you're like set on tight end the whole year. It's just sometimes a little frustrating, especially when 32 points from a tight end goes to Matt Black. It's a little frustrating.
Well, there
I
were
think
some
what's gonna be
big tight
frustrating-
end days this week, and honestly, I'm pretty upset about it. So, I ended up winning, so it doesn't matter. But I talked to you guys about this in every league I'm in, except this one. I picked up Jonnu Smith because if you look at the trend, he'd been doing pretty well the last few weeks. I thought there was a chance that Jonnu Smith was going to pop off. Kraft was there, and I got lured in by Kraft, and I wanted to hedge my bets. I'm like, I got Jonnu in these 3 other leagues. I'm going to hedge my bets and go with Kraft here. Kraft gets nothing. Jonnu Smith has 2 TDs and 100 and something yards. So, yeah, not happy about that. But yeah, reading tight ends this year, it's been tricky. It's been tricky getting the right one. Sorry, go ahead.
I think
Then
the
what were you
last
gonna
2
say?
years. No, yeah, the last 2 years I think it's been very tricky. Go on, Vinny.
No, I was just gonna say I'm just really excited that Austin is just saving it for his in division matchups.
Oh no.
Because here's the thing. I know that I'm with Alex. I think obviously Miami is just not the same team. Tua's not really throwing it deep. I think they've figured out their coverage. Reek is going to have a 20-point fantasy game at some point between now and the end of the year. It's just who plays him. Is it going to be wasted on Chris, who's out of the playoffs, or is it going to hit Nolan, or is it going to hit Mitch, and is it going to decide the division? I think that Tyreek is arguably one of the biggest first-round busts, him and Christian McCaffrey. I think Reek more so because you started him the whole time, because you're like, oh, he's still Reek. You didn't even find a replacement because you thought he'd still get his. So there's an argument to be made that he's the biggest first-round bust. But I truly think in the next 3 weeks, Tyreek is going to have a Tyreek game, and he's really going to screw somebody in the division.
Hey, Vinny,
He has had
Tyreek,
2 games this year where you're happy about him. The very first one, and then the one he just had. And even that's like not a fantastic game. 12 points out of a wide receiver 1. Like it's good, but other than that, he's just been abysmal. Even with Tua there.
is this just Vinny's way of coping mechanism to where it's cute and all that one of us is going to play Hill, but from Vinny's perspective, he's going to have to play Mixon, Lamar, and then Miles' 2 running backs. I'm not worried about Hill's 20-point game. I'd rather have the chance against Hill than have to go against that division right now.
Or someone on this next
What was
team.
that? What is that again? What do we feel about the integrity division?
Jamar Chase here.
Yeah.
So Miles taking the L here. Honestly, maybe the curse is real because Miles went down this week. But I think it didn't really have to do with Miles. I think he started all the right people. I mean, other than Ladd McConkey, but I wouldn't start Ladd over either of these guys. I think he made all the right calls. Just Luis's team popped off, and Miles didn't get enough TDs. But yeah, Luis's team just went nuts, especially Stafford and Chase, who's just been an absolute monster the last few weeks. Luis's team is peaking at the right time, which is a concern for me because our division may very well come down to me versus Luis. Like there's a division that's going to come down to Dad versus Mitch, a division that's going to come down to Vinny versus Break, and a division that could come down to me versus Luis. There's the biggest separation there, but still, it's very possible that that's what's going to happen. So it's a tight race here at the end. But yeah, don't have a lot to say about this one other than just his team is peaking at the right time. And like not only that, he's got Jennings on the bench, which I think if you start Jennings over Adam, this team is even more dangerous. So like we've been worried about Luis's team for a while, and he's peaking at the right time. I think if Pacheco comes back, it might hurt Hunt, but other than that, like his team looks pretty stacked.
I think just speaking on Jamar Chase for a second. If there's one player that I just did not have the cojones to draft this year, I don't know. I don't know if I ever said it on the podcast. I probably have multiple text messages to different people. I thought Chase was probably the best value at wide receiver. I didn't take him above wide receiver 5 in any league. Like I thought Reek was a safe option, then your CD. But every single time I was like, dang, Jamar Chase has that guy. Like he's gonna have that. He has the potential for the Tyreek season where he's just head and shoulders better than the next wide receiver. I just didn't know. Same thing with Saquon. It's like, it's the riskier pick, but man, if you drafted Chase in any league, can you just click on like what his season so far is insane. I mean, yeah, he already has 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns, and like the last few weeks, 12, 11, 4, 44, 19. He's got a 31-point game in there. I mean, that dude's winning you at least 2 or 3 games by himself. I mean, if you lose a game with a 44, 31-point wide receiver, that's just a terrible team.
Yeah, compare this to Tyreek Hill, and it's like, how many games are you unhappy with? 1, 2, 3, 4. But I mean, it's expected you're going to have an occasional 7-point game. So I'll say there are 3 games where you're not happy with Jamar Chase, and every other game you're over the moon ecstatic about how great he's played this year. Yeah, so but like, I mean, he does have a late bye though. Like having a bye followed by Pittsburgh, he's got some tough matchups here at the end of the season. But yeah, I mean, I think he might be matchup proof though, to be honest. But
the issue is this year there's only like 3 relevant wide receivers. There are 3 wide receivers that like, so if you look at the 4th wide receiver, there's only like 8 or 9 wide receivers that have 10-point averages. But if you look at the number 4 wide receiver or 4 wide receiver, if I told you these names right now, do you think, okay, so let me just, I'm going to do this real quick. So the number 4 wide receiver right now is Terry McLaurin. Okay. Do you think he's got more fantasy points or less fantasy points than Devon A-Chain?
Who are we talking about?
Terry McLaurin is the number 4 fantasy receiver right now. He's got 102 fantasy points. Do you think he has more or less fantasy points than Devon A-Chain?
I'm going to say less, just because like he's the number 4 fantasy wide receiver right now, but that's because there have been like 5 guys ahead of him that have either gone down or missed significant time. I think he's I'm not knocking Terry McLaurin, but I think he's the number 4 fantasy wide receiver because he's played every game, whereas a lot of the other top wide receivers have either missed significant time, like Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, or have gone down for the season, like Godwin and people like that. So I'm going to say less than H-N.
Yeah. He has less than H-N. Does he has more or less than DeAndre Swift?
Surely he's got more than DeAndre Swift. I mean, DeAndre Swift's had some good games, like string together.
He's got less than DeAndre Swift. Does he have more or less than Kenneth Walker III? Does he have more or less than Jonathan Taylor?
We're talking about total points, not average.
Total points.
I'll say more than Taylor, less than Walker.
Does he have more or less than Jones? Does he have more or less than Ramondre Stevenson? Does he have more than less than Najee Harris? The answer is less.
Wow.
He's not even 102 points puts you right at Brian Robinson Jr. at 98, 99 fantasy points. So the point is, like, this year there's only 3 relevant wide receivers, really. It's Jefferson, St. Brown, and Jamar Chase. If you don't have one of those 3 wide receivers, it's just running back's more value. So that's why I get Vinny's point about Chase in the sense that, like, Chase is really, it's like the old Travis Kelce argument. He's not just really, really good. He's much better than everyone else because of the opportunity, or like, you know what I'm trying to say, versus his peers of who you're having to start. So like the old Kelce argument. But yeah, it gets ridiculous that that the wide receivers took such a massive hit in fantasy value this year. And you're right, there was hits to top wide receivers that could have maybe skewed it this year. But yeah, it's these running backs have taken over the fantasy value this year again. It's the reemergence of the running backs.
And then some people over here with the best record in the league drafting a wide receiver in the first round. So
yeah, that's exactly right. So if you didn't hit one of those wide receivers and you went wide receivers early, like we were hating on Matt's team early because we didn't think St. Brown was going to be good in this league. St. Brown's the number two fantasy wide receiver and the only one worth. So Jamar Chase is the third overall fantasy player non QB. Like he's actually in the mix.
Just to defend myself, I was on the Amon-Ra bandwagon. I actually really like that pick. I took him first in another league over. I mean, I feel like an idiot because it was a PPR league, so I did take him over guys like Jamar Chase. But
Yeah.
I wasn't as down on that pick as you guys were because I am a big Amon-Ra guy. But yeah, there have been some games where Amon-Ra has struggled just because like the game script has been so weird for the Lions. There's games where they just get up to huge leads. But anyway, one last thing about you're talking about running backs. I think one of the issues Dad has been having, you guys talked about obviously starting the wrong RB2 and some injuries, but I think one of the issues that Dad has been having is Henry's starting to go downhill towards the end of the season. So like he was riding super high for a long time, and then the last few weeks, like, yeah, he had 24 one week, but outside of that, 13, 12, 10. And like, that sounds good, but that's not Derrick Henry good, right? And a lot of these are salvaged by TDs, which, like, yeah, he's getting a lot of TDs, but realistically, most players don't score a touchdown every single game of the season. He's like, so like, these games, there's very easily a 6-point game, 4-point game, 7-point game if he doesn't draw zone. And with Lamar Jackson as your quarterback, there's a strong chance he steals some of those TDs sometimes. So I'm not down on Henry by any stretch of imagination, but I am curious, do you think this is his age catching up to him here at the end of the season, or has this just been kind of game script because they were so far behind against Pittsburgh, for example, that it hasn't been the same sledding for him? Because like Cincinnati's not a good defense, and he didn't run particularly well against Cincinnati as an example.
I think more game script. They haven't been blowing anybody out. They've been in close games, and when they're in close games, they want to put the ball in Lamar's hands.
Sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think they were ever since Mitch talked about their absolutely trend-setting, record-setting 450 yards per game or whatever it was. They've kind of come back down to earth offensively for a few weeks. Lamar's still been great, but he hasn't been as great as well with Henry. So I think it's more just a whole total offense thing than
just
Henry. But Henry can't keep that up. He can't keep up 25, 30-point games regularly like he was. That was insane.
Sorry, Alex, not to go back to my wide receiver thing real quick, but just food for thought. Garrett Wilson is the 8th overall wide receiver. Like, just think about that. Okay, so back to the Derrick Henry.
But again, if you sort it by average, like, and again, right. Yes, it matters that they play, right? It matters that they play the games. But if you sort it by average, I think that's a bigger thing because, like, when you look at my team as an example, like, sure, I keep guessing wrong on freaking Josh Downs. It kills me, but like, when you look at his average isn't great. But if you start him in the right weeks, because you're playing like the waivers or because you're like, going with guys like Tillman, like this is the first week I've missed on Tillman, right? Like if you're playing the right guys the right weeks, you can get a lot more points out of that than just trying to start. Sure, there's
Wilson every week.
There's guys like Jefferson that are set them and forget them, right? But there's a lot of wide receivers where you play matchups, right? Like for example, this game, Lamb and Jefferson, you're not benching those guys, but there's definitely an argument for Tillman or Downs in my lineup. I could have gone with either one. I made the wrong call this week, right? Like there's an argument for potentially ever starting Ridley or Watson. And if that had started Watson, he would have gotten more points. So I just think, I think I get what you're saying, but I think there's more to it with wide receiver stats. Also, you were talking about running backs. One running back, I think, is there a more disappointing early pick this year than Travis Etienne? So if you go by average points for, Travis Etienne last year was the top 10 running back for an average points per game. This year, where do you guys think he is in average points per game for a running back?
He's out of the top
10. Oh, God. Yeah, out of like probably 35.
He's out of the top 40.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that's man, because Breece Hall has kind of turned it on lately. I think I would switch my answer back to ETN as the biggest for sure draft flop. Okay, but back to your Derrick Henry comments. I had Justice Hill all year. Like I actually don't have Derrick Henry. Well, I have Derrick Henry in every other league, but not this league. And I've held Justice Hill the whole year. I just recently dropped him because when Keaton Mitchell comes back, I'm not sure. So, like, hear me out real quick. If the first 8 or 9 weeks when you don't have Keaton Mitchell, the game plan is if option B, if Derrick Henry gets hurt, then Justice Hill's just going to take the whole role, right? But now that Keaton Mitchell's back, the offense coordinator Monk and Arbaugh could be like, okay, well now the game plan changes. If Henry gets hurt, Mitchell will just come in. Keaton Mitchell will take all the carries and leave Justice Hill in his same role. So I get you. Like I was waiting for Derrick Henry to slow down way earlier in the year. That's why I held Justice Hill for 9 full weeks of our fantasy season. But he never really truly did. And by the time he did slow down, Keaton Mitchell's healthy. So I'm not sure.
Well, and
if
for the
this,
record, I'm not saying he's slowing down. Like because if you look at
true.
like 13 points was on only 11 carries, right? 10 points on 13 carries. You got a fumble. That's very rare. Like I'm not saying he's technically slowing down, but it is worth noting that like the games where Dad was winning on that huge streak. Look at how many points Henry got. Dad's lost, I think, 3 of the last 4 are his losses. And look at the
Yeah.
points that Henry's had in the 3 of the last 4
You
games.
could probably make that same argument with me and Barkley though, so I'm not necessarily worried about that. It's just like I think the thing is I was more nervous about Henry being like 31 or 30. Oh, there he is, 30 years old. It says on the screen right there, being 30, and them the Ravens doesn't know it. The whole thing about the Ravens is the same as the 49ers. No one cares anymore what they do in the regular season. Lamar can stack up all the accolades he wants. The narrative has always been what can Lamar do in the playoffs when they run the specific defense that he can't go against or whatever, and he never produces. So it's like I thought for most of the year, the same thing the Niners were doing, rest McCaffrey, because nothing matters except for the playoffs. I thought they would do the same thing with Henry, but they've used Henry. So even though it seems like, okay, kind of slowing down, or my words of slowing down, he's still being used like normal other running backs. He's just not getting used above. And I guess his production isn't the same. Whether that's Derrick Henry just getting, banged up throughout the year because the old, like running backs and defenses get banged up as the year goes along. Right, we get that. But I think everything's actually good signs for Derrick Henry is what I'm trying to say. I think everything is actually better than I thought beginning of the year and going way better.
All right, and we'll go on to just finish up around the league recap because we got kind of sidetracked a lot there. But last game to look
Okay.
at, some scrub-ass team on the
No.
gets a W. But maybe the curse was just delayed, right? It was a tape-delayed curse. Lamar Jackson finally has his worst game of the season. They lose to the Steelers, which means the Steelers now have a stranglehold in this division. And, if only Bray had started the right QB. I mean, you guys would have started Goff over Jackson and his 42 points this week, right, guys?
Definitely not.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have either. It's just, we commented on starting a QB against Pittsburgh. Look, last week we said you shouldn't start a QB against Pittsburgh. Well, Pittsburgh, they listened. They're like, yeah, the pod believes in us. So, way to go Steelers D, I guess. But yeah, Mitch gets the win on the back of Saquon Barkley. Even though Barkley once again had a bunch of TDs snaked, he still managed to get enough to get the dub here. So yeah, that's making these divisions a lot more interesting. So let's look at the divisions real quick because not a lot to say about this game other than Mitch starting the wrong wide receiver, but we told him to go with
Yeah,
Waddle.
I was gonna say Barkley and Allen masking my bad manager skills again.
Yeah. But yeah, you started the wrong defense. You started the wrong wide receiver. But yeah, let's look at the standings. I kind of touched on this earlier, but so 3 games left. Only the division games left. Luis is a game back in the division, but 2 games back overall. So like again, he gets to play me, so that's 1. So like it could very well come down to me versus Luis. In this division, Vinny is up a game. However, they have the same division record, so this could very well come down to Break versus Vinny. Winner takes the division. Same thing here. Right now, Mitch is not winning the division. He's listed high for points for. Right now, Dad is still winning the division due to the division tiebreaker. So it's going to come down to Dad versus Mitch. And then the wild card is also still heated race. These ties are very much going to come into play, but like Yak of Lamb, Penguins, Avengers, Sparkplugs, Revis and Butthead, and then the other, Sharks and Phoenix. So there's a lot of teams here that could go a lot of different ways. There's 3 teams live in the Integrity Division, 2 in the Intensity Division. I guess theoretically, if Matt were to win out, and then I think Matt has to win out, and then Mitch and Dad have to lose out and then tie each other. There's a way Matt sneaks in as the wild card, but yeah, that's very unlikely.
I think it would be hilarious if you take Matt's 2 ties because they were to myself and Nolan. If you take those 2 ties and give Matt the win, how crazy the finish would be. Because he would be 6-5, and then Nolan and I would still be tied.
Yeah, and you guys would be 7-4 you guys would both be 7-4, so it would make that
Yeah, and
super
just he,
interesting because everybody would be very, very close across the
especially,
board.
yeah, for wild card too. Yeah.
Yeah, for wild card, it would have opened that up big time. Um, but yeah, no, you brought up a good point, Alex. I actually was rooting for Mitch, and then I realized there's a lot more outs for me if Mitch would have lost. But now it's yeah, that the being tied in the division, me and Adam being a game apart really doesn't matter because if if he wins and I win going into our game, if we both go 2-0, he would win for division if he beats me. So it's like, oh dang. At the end of the day, if you always think it's up against, oh, I need to beat my next closest competitor to get into the playoffs. The only thing that changes that is, now Miles and Cam have the ability to play spoiler. Um,
I don't think
Matt can play spoiler in your league.
Cam is very much alive though. I know he's got a 1-2 division record, but I mean, realistically, Miles has got a good team, and if he just beats you or Adam, right, then Cam is very much alive.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, somebody has to win out and then have things go their way in the other direction. Yeah, I think Cam's alive because let's see, if he wins out, that automatically puts a loss on Adam. Yeah, if he wins out and then I lose to
It
anybody
just
else,
it just takes Adam or you to lose. Yeah,
yeah, but I would have to lose too because he can't catch me in division record.
right. But assuming
That makes sense. In points,
yeah, yeah, he wins out because, but that then you have to play Adam still. So yeah, this game's gonna
right?
really come down to you versus Adam for sure. Well,
Which I remind you, Lamar Jackson, Nico Collins, Jonathan Taylor, all on bye week 14.
yeah, that's gonna be rough for Adam.
Yeah, so let's look at the upcoming schedule then real fast because again we're in the division matchups now. I don't know if we can see them yet here, so we'll have to go to actual schedule. So league schedule. Is there a way to see more than just one full schedule maybe?
Yep, yep, full schedule.
This.
You just got to scroll down.
Oh, okay. All right. So this is the upcoming matchup, first week of the division rounds. I play Matt. This is a tougher matchup than I wanted it to be. I mean, Matt's team is popping off right now. He didn't even have Chuba Hubbard this week, and he was the top scorer. Mitch plays Gummy Bears. Gummy Bears are playing better. I mean, they scored 90 points, plus points this week, so this isn't a pushover by any stretch of the imagination. I have to feel like Vinny's a huge favorite here. Miles' team just hasn't. He's been very unlucky the last couple of weeks, so maybe he'll finally get lucky. But I think he's been unlucky again, with just not scoring touchdowns. So I mean, maybe he'll find those TDs, but if not, I mean, based on the last couple of weeks, I think Vinny's in a good spot here. Dad is on the snide, but I think this is the game where he gets off it up against Austin. Austin's just been super unlucky all season. Luis's team is peaking at the right time. I think that's a dub here. This matchup is interesting though. Both these teams are live for the playoffs. Both these teams are good. I think the marquee match this week is going to be the Yakovlam versus Flying Penguins. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I actually didn't know that was on the schedule. That's a huge. Whoever loses is out of playoffs, and whoever wins is very, very firmly in the playoff race.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, is there a world where Cameron can catch you if you don't take another L besides playing against Cameron due to division record? Don't you also have to lose another match besides just to Cam?
He could catch me that way because he has 2 losses. He would just need to outscore me, I think, by what, like 70, 72 points. So it's
Wait,
technically doable.
isn't first tiebreaker
Well,
division
the first
record?
tiebreaker is division record.
Yeah, I have 1 loss, he has 2 losses. So if he beats me by winning out, we have the same
The same
division
division
record.
record. Gotcha. Sorry.
He would have to beat me by 75 points over the next 3 games. So it's doable, like 1 pop-off week and 1 bad week I mean, heck, I scored 53 points 1 week. So I have one of those and I could lose all that.
Yeah, anyone has one bad week in the next 3 weeks, it's GG's. The I'm sorry, I keep looking at period on your screen, Alex. I just keep looking at period 313 Sparklugs versus Avengers. Like my season just might be over right there.
And remember, you're supposed to be hanging out with us this day to watch football games. If you're not there, and be very upset. I'm flying to California. You better come and hang out with us like you said you would.
Rewind about a month, yeah, exactly a month ago. I was 3-3-1, and Nolan hadn't lost once, or maybe hadn't lost yet. Fast forward a month later, I keep looking at this period 13 game. That's the playoff game, I think, right there. That's gonna be a because I mean, no, Chris and Austin, don't get me wrong, they have great teams, but breakdown wise, it's not necessarily that scary to Nolan and I. So, I mean, I just jinxed myself, but I'm just saying, if it goes based off breakdown, that week 13 game decides my whole season.
I think for you though, Mitch,
Yeah.
what are you doing this week?
What do you mean? I'm playing Chris.
Well, I mean, what are you doing to offset Josh Allen and Chase Brown? Like, are you plugging and chugging Eckler, Edward? I mean, obviously you got to get a quarterback off waivers. You either choose to start Eckler or get a running back off waivers.
Yes.
Um,
So depending on what Robinson's situation is, I'm locked up with Eckler. But to be honest with you, it just there's always a running back or a wide receiver. I have no problem dropping DJ Moore or Jalen Waddle. I only needed them this week, one more week, or whatever. So it's just I'm the thing is with Chris's team though, like his average QB is usually around 17 points a week. There's a lot of QBs on waivers that you can find between the 15 and 20 mark. That you're not going to find the 25-point QB, but like um multiple people did it. Like Alex has got 36 points off of a QB he picked up this week. Luis picked up Stafford this week. Other people have been doing the QB carousel, so it's like it's not that big of a deal. And also, if you look at player the this roster this year of people's teams, a lot of people are holding two QBs, like way more. Most people hold two QBs at the beginning of the year because you're trying to get that upside, that Jaden Daniels type player who you drafted late in the draft. But then by the middle of the season, it's pretty solidified who your QB is going to be. But this year, if people are holding two QBs, so I'm not exactly too worried about it. If you look at the QB rankings as well, they're all groups, all the free agents. Like even Rodgers could have a good week, Herbert could have a good week, Carr could have a good week. Like there's so many options. Russ could have a good week. It's just picking the right one. Alex did the correct thing and he picked the right one. He put in Bo Nix. Well done, even against his Falcons team that he really likes to, root for. So it's like as long as I make the right correct call, it's same with the wide receivers. I think there are a lot of wide receivers out there. You just got to know which one's going to do well that week, and it's like it gets to a point now where it's like you're almost looking at who's been calling them correctly, and you kind of copy their strat. Especially in like other leagues, I'll see it because I don't know how to call it correctly. So like I'll look this week. I'll look at defensive rankings and all that kind of stuff and matchups. But then I might just look at in another league who picked up this QB, and I might just copy them. Because it's just so hard. And like Sylvie even picked up Quentin Johnson last week, and he looks like a top 12 wide receiver now. Like, I don't know. It's just, and she just got him 2 weeks ago. It seems very ebb and flow. So I'm not necessarily too worried about it, but when you're trying to replace a player like Lamar Jackson, that's a little different. People don't realize Josh Allen's only getting 22 points to 24 points a week. He was the number one fantasy QB last year at 24.5, 25 points a week, or whatever, and he's getting about that same mark. But Lamar's and what's his name, Burrow, are just destroying him this year. So it's like if I had to replace Lamar or Burrow in the last 3 weeks, I'd be a little nervous. Allen isn't the guy, and to be honest with you, there might be a week where I start a different, because Allen's on a bye. I might get more points from my bye week replacement QB than I would get Allen because I'm starting Allen every single week. Whereas there are teams like Luis and Alex who are very much in the playoffs wildcard, and they're just playing QB carousel. Even Matt. Matt, I know, has some two bad losses, not a good record, but he's been playing QB carousel the whole year since Richardson went down. So it's just that's like 4 or 5 teams that have been playing. Austin played QB carousel for a little bit with Stroud going out. So it's just like, uh, yeah, I might be jinxing myself, but who knows? I'm not. And if I was playing Nolan that week, I'd be scared. But thank you, Chris, for not having as good of a team this year. So it kind of works out.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I,
Um,
if I kind of rambled on that because I was looking at something else. If I had to told you guys right now which defense in the league has the least amount of TDs, which defense, like, just give me some names. Like, so if I told you the Panthers and the Bengals were last with 36 TDs against. Just start give me some names who you think what team defense has the least amount of TDs allowed.
I mean, we've been talking about the steel curtain, so
Say what?
I'd probably say Vikings, Broncos.
Would you say, Alex?
I think
we've been talking about the steel curtain, so I'm going to say the Steelers maybe.
Yeah, Steelers is a
gonna-
great one. Steelers is
I'm
number
gonna go
two.
with the Vikings.
Vikings.
Are you doing that just because I'm showing? This is just fantasy points, like not, but yeah.
Oh yeah. No. So and then you said Vikings. Vikings are where are the Vikings? Like can I find the Vikings? Oh, the Vikings are fifth lowest against. So those are good guesses. So there's only a couple teams below 20, and that would be the Broncos, Eagles, Lions, and who did you just say that was also the correct one? The first one you just said, the Steelers. But guess the number one team with the lowest amount of touchdowns against? The Chargers.
Wow.
And it's like they have 15 TDs allowed on the year. 15. There might be something going on in the Charger land that we might not be really seeing this early. If they might actually like the Chargers might actually beat a team in the first round of the playoffs in the AFC, and that's
if they hadn't
crazy.
tried to blow the game yesterday, like they were looking really good. Like people are down on the Chargers because I'm saying historically, over the past we'll say decade or so, the Chargers have been known primarily for their offense with Phillip Rivers and then Justin Herbert's first few years, but couldn't get it together on defense. Even though they had the players, they were always hurt. I think their new coach has brought in the right attitude. Their defense has been really well, and their offense has been kind of struggling. But yeah, I mean the Chargers, they're 7-3 right now. They're and so are the Chargers and Broncos and the Chiefs are all like, look, that whole division, if you don't count that one team in Las Vegas, is pretty good this year. So
Yeah, and going back to what Vinny asked earlier, I probably totally jinxed myself, and Chris is going to have by far and away his best week scoring this week, and then I'm going to have to eat everything I just said on the podcast. Chris is going to come on the podcast next week. He hasn't been on in a while, but of course he'll come on next week after he beats me. Just messing. I'm very excited because also it's interesting just like at the same level like this fantasy season. I don't know if it's just been me personally or not, but it seems very it seems like a throwback. It used to be like wide receiver and quarterback heavy, and then this year it's like the running backs are just like you look at like the highest paid players in the NFL, and then you look at like who's got yards and touches and yards, and it's like the running backs are destroying every other statistic for valuableness or whatever it's called, and like they're just not getting paid at all. And it's just very interesting that all of a sudden like the ebb and flow of the NFL, it's like, oh, it's changing to a passing league, just put the flags on or whatever, and it's like we've ran the ball more than we ever have in the last like 14 years. So it's just been a weird fun year for me personally in fantasy, and I'm just happy to be in it at the end of the year, I guess.
Yeah, it has been kind of fun seeing I agree that throwback has kind of happened. I think quarterbacks, obviously with Lamar and Burrow doing what they're doing is kind of crazy, but I do feel like there's now that disparity back between a top one or two and then like number 6, where it's been kind of clustered for a little bit. Where
Closer
you
to,
could
like
start
2012 instead of 22, yeah.
you could start somebody 10 through 3 and be very happy with their production. And now this year, you're probably not very happy with number 10's production. So it has been a fun year for sure.
Do we have any predictions? Any wild like Alex, you want to predict what do you think is going to happen in the integrity division?
yeah, so let's take a look at the standings again.
What do you think is going to happen?
Okay. So I think a lot of it is going to come down to this week. Miles is mathematically eliminated right now, even if he wins out, right? Yeah, 'cause he started 1 and 2. Maybe,
Yeah.
just because everyone else. Yeah, I mean, so I think Cameron's team is peaking at the right time, but I still think that the highest quality individual teams are the Penguins and Team Phoenix. So I think Cameron can play spoiler. I think whichever team gets past Cameron and wins the head-to-head is going to win it. So it's hard to say for sure going into this. Let's see, like Brake's going to have a bunch of buys in week 14. And I think that's going to cost him. Like Brake has a fantastic team, but the last week of the fantasy season, he's missing Lamar, Taylor, Collins, and Sutton. I think that's probably too big of a gap to overcome because Vinny, you're not missing anyone, are you?
No, I don't get hit by buys anymore.
So,
I'm done on buys.
Yeah,
Broncos
so
D.
you're done on significant. Well, you have Brian Thomas on buy, but you weren't going to start him anyway because Judy's popping off, which I have a question about that later. But yeah, so I think Vinny's the leader in the clubhouse because he is ahead of the division right now, and Brake's the one missing everyone to buys. But I do think there's a dark horse chance of Cameron if Cameron somehow wins this week without Burrow. But that's a big ask. Sliding Pollard in for Breece Hall I'm fine with, but Cameron's got to find a quarterback for this week. So, I think it really just sucks for Brake that, I hate that Brake's players are missing week 14, honestly, because Cameron's players are missing this week, I'm picking Brake to win this week, and that means we'd have a really cool match between Brake and Vinny for the division because Vinny's got to play Cam at full strength, but because Brake is not going to have any of his team for week 14, I got to give it to Vinny at this point because he's currently the leader in the clubhouse. What about you guys?
Well, that's my point of this question to you is because basically now I'm going to have to beat Nolan in 2 weeks in order to prevent myself from being pied. Is that correct?
So as far as the pie bet goes right now,
2 weeks from now, if you think Adam's going to win the division,
you're getting pied. Mitch, I got bad news. You're getting pied no matter what, because the only way for you to not get pied, you needed 2 blacks to make the playoffs. Because either I'm going to pie you or Vinny's going to pie both of us. So
that's right.
So you're getting pied no matter what, unless Miles or Matt pull off the Christmas miracle.
Okay, so let me rephrase it. So in order to avoid getting pied twice by Alex, then I need to win the next 2 weeks. One by Vinny and one by you, because I don't know if Darnold's going to get the yardage. Oh, well. It was still fun watching him.
Yeah, Darnold did start hot, though. He made things pretty interesting.
I should have said he's going to have a better year than Cousins' third best year as a Viking.
So funny.
No, that was my favorite part of the year. So, no, it's good. Honestly, I'll never forget that week 1. I'm watching the Vikings going, I can't believe I tied my happiness to Darnold, and I'm spitting up my drink just after every completion, just oh my gosh. But yeah, so basically in 2 weeks, the value comes down to me getting pied again by Alex and whether or not I have any fantasy hopes. Cool, fun times, fun
times.
We may as well look at the other divisions. So what do we think? So we're all kind of on the Team Phoenix bandwagon then, as far as who we think wins the division.
I'm on the Dinosaurs bandwagon.
Yeah, that's picking with your heart. Look, picking with my heart, and it's tough, by the way, right? Because I want Brake to do well because he's my little brother and for the pie bet purposes. But at the same time, the meme of Brake just not winning is kind of funny. He's got the second most points for, and he may miss the playoffs. But I just think, who I actually think is going to win is Team Phoenix. What about Intelligence Division? Because this is only a 2-horse race, but I think Chris can play spoiler here pretty good. I mean, they have to play each other, obviously, but I think Chris, Chris's team is good right now. It wasn't good all year, but it's good right now.
For sure. You have top 3 running back in McCaffrey. You're very good. Yeah, go on, sorry.
I think to kind of jump in here, I think Mitch would probably agree with this statement that Nolan's team this year, but the way that Baker and Love are playing are historically how my teams have been in the past. Great running backs, great wide receivers, no quarterback, and then you get one little injury bug where maybe he starts starting Brian Robinson Jr. and he starts doing well.
See, I don't want to say it, but you're 100% right.
If he can't shore up the RB2 and he can't hit on quarterback, I think this is Mitch's division to lose right now. I think I think it's the DoD. You have a quarterback, you have a chance, and
you have a top 3 running back in the top, and you have a top 3 QB. It overshadows everything. So if you go back and look at the winning teams, the only outlier year in the last 4, it's been Matt, me, Sylvie, or whatever. So it's and then and who was last year? I apologize. Matt again. So So it's just like if you look at the structure of our teams, we do the second round value QB every single time, and then somehow we let Matt get Derrick Henry twice. So it's like that's just been the structure, and then the rest. I completely agree, Vinny. I just didn't want to like broken record all the time. This isn't Nolan's team.
I
The reason
like
why
how Mitch
was
refuses to give Matt any credit. Like Matt didn't have the savvy to draft Henry where he drafted. It's because we let Matt get
no,
Henry.
I gave Matt Josh Allen. Stop it. I had to stop it. That championship, Matt drafted Derrick Henry, and then I went Lamar second round. No one in the world was going Lamar over in the top 5 picks or whatever. I did in our DoD league, and that dropped Josh Allen to the other one. You can make the claim this year that anyone who picked at the turn gave it to me with Josh Allen. So I'm just saying, I'm not. Matt obviously doesn't need any credit. He's earned everything he's gotten. I'm just saying, if you look at the structure of what's won, Sylvie's the only one who's really snuck in there with quite a little bit. She had the number one QB. She just had a little bit better core than what Matt and I have had. Matt and I didn't have as good as a core. But back to Vinny's point, this is exactly right. This is the best core again. Going back to you and your dad have the best cores, but without that elite QB to plug in every week, I'm not afraid. Like
But
when
you say that,
Baker
okay, so let's look at Dad's QBs. Baker Mayfield, QB3 on the year. Jordan Love,
he's
QB6.
not,
So Dad has
but
the
Vinny's
QB3
point
and the
is-
QB6.
Yeah, but Vinny's point is to now. All those points by Love, like look at Love's things and Baker's things. They haven't been able to get top points very consistently at all. They're writing those points from the beginning of the year. So at the first 5 weeks of the year, when Baker and Love were,
But I don't. Okay, first of all, I'm going to just give you a pretty hard disagree on Baker. He's had one bad week, which was last week against San Fran. Like that was bad. Every other week
Sure.
he's played well, and he's doing it without his two best wide receivers. He's getting wide receiver back this week. So I think Baker has been absolutely solid, even without his wide receivers. I'll give it to you more on Love. Love isn't as strong because he's had 2 bad weeks out of his last 3, but still.
sure. So Baker, if he does go back to Baker and Baker stays this good, but like since
But also
Baker's
think
had
about
the-
where he drafted Baker. Like that's a thing too, where he drafts Baker versus where Jalen Hurts, who's right behind him in both points per game and total points. Then he had to take him in the first round.
Okay, I'm agreeing with all that, but it's just like, how do I have more points for than him? He has a number. He has Baker and Derrick Henry, and I have more points for. It's just it goes to show like he started Love a lot of those weeks. He didn't get Baker's points. I agree, but in the last 3 weeks, it's 28, 22, 10. In order to be on that pace, he has to be at 27. That's his pace the whole year. Be the one because right after that is Burrow at 26 and Allen at 25, 24. So if he doesn't stay on that pace, 28, 22, 10, 2 of the last 3 weeks since his injuries of Godwin and Evans, he has not been on his pace. So I'm just saying, I'm taking liberties here on Vinny's point. Vinny and I are assuming, taking the liberty that Baker's not going to be the 28 average and he's going to be more the 20, which puts him in the range of Darnold, Murray, Cousins, that range. So if Baker goes back to that range and Love isn't performing, it goes back to Vinny's team where you have the best core. You have 4 players better than my team.
I think those are big. I think you're using recency, like not recency bias. You're using bias, right? Like against Baker. Like he's had one bad game. Sorry, 2 bad games all season. 2 10-point games. Every other game he's had 20 or more points this season. And one of those bad games is without his number 1 and number 2 wide receivers against the Niners, which is one of the best defenses in the league, like from actual defensive players, not fantasy defense, but actual defense in the league. Jalen Hurts, who's Vinny's QB, has had 1 10-point game, a 17, 18. He's had 3 games below 20 fantasy points. So like we're giving him all the credit when he's got 3 games sub 20 and Baker only has 2.
But Vinny's Hurts got it at the beginning of the year, 20, 25, 10, 18. So that's really bad. And that's why Vinny's team was
His
struggling.
most recent game, 17 against Washington, is below 20.
Right, but then you go back 33, 33, 36 in the last 4 weeks. If you look at Baker, what's it called? Remember, we're going against the average, 10, 22, 28, 32. So there's only 50% of those, 2 of those weeks, 28 and 28, 32 is the average. You have to be hitting 27, 28 points a week to be scary is what I think Vinny and my point is, I'm not trying to speak for Vinny. Like once you start even hitting the 22-point average, you're just grouped in with all the other QBs, is all I'm saying. And in order to get that average up, you have to be above the average 27, 28, not be hitting it right then and there. All I'm trying to say is like if Baker and Love are hitting 25 points a week, 20 to 25, and not the 30 points a week or whatever, or the 28, then I'm not as scared. But
Well, then are you
when
scared of my waiver wire QB, Bo Nix, because he's
yes,
peaking at the right
yes,
team?
Yeah,
Right,
probably.
Charlie?
yes,
Let's go.
that's what I
Yeah.
said.
Let's go.
That's why I said
He's
And
better
you know-
than Dak.
And hey,
He's
look,
way
look
better
at his
than
matchup
Dak.
the next
He's
2
way
weeks.
better than Dak.
He gets
So Alex,
Vegas, Cleveland, and then the Colts.
go back to your question to me, Alex, about your team. I said the same thing. I said I don't want to root for any team that has Dak as their QB who's already been paid. And then you fast forward 6 or 7 weeks, Dak's had a terrible year. Now that you're playing the QB carousel like a lot of other people can this year, your team is a lot more scary, 100%. But I've always said you had a playoff team because how good your core is. So I'm not knocking the core drafting strat. Vinny makes the playoffs with the core. I'm only speaking in the sense of having to win a championship, which is very, very narrow mindset. If you're going like, yes, Nolan drafted better than me. Yes, Alex, you drafted better than me. Vinny drafts better than me 6 out of the last 7 years, but doesn't have a championship to show for it. That's my thing that Vinny is talking about is every time he's tired of hearing, why did Vinny go Jalen Hurts this year? Because he's probably tired of me saying, oh, good core, Vinny, but I'm going to beat you again.
Yeah, but
because
I think Vinny, I don't think Jalen Hurts is what's winning not like winning for Vinny. Like I think what's winning for Vinny is David Montgomery has been amazing this year. That was a great pick by Vinny. I think Vinny kind of robbed somebody on this trade a little bit, which has worked out great for Vinny, which is hilarious because like Vinny was the one bashing Josh Jacobs and then traded for him. And I do love the fact that Terry McLaurin has popped off. I love that. But I mean,
not to be mean to Vinny, Alex, not to be mean to Vinny because he's literally taking my draft strategy, so I'm not trying to be like put it down. But like, so you're telling me he drafted a 4th round steal and then he drafted the best tight end and that puts you in the playoffs. So basically all he has to do is lock up a QB in the 1st round, get a mid-round running back steal, and then the top tight end, and he's a top fantasy player with most points scored.
Yes, as long as you don't botch it with the other picks, right? It's the old adage, you can't win your league in round 1, but you can lose it, right? So like in round 1, Vinny made what is considered in DoD a safe pick by taking a guy you think is going to be a top, 3, 4, 5 fantasy QB and locks it down. That was a safe pick. That didn't win him the league. What I think is giving him a chance to win the league is he made a really great pick in Montgomery as a late round filler. He took A.J. Brown at when you'd expect to take him, and A.J. Brown has worked out. He made a really good pick with his Kittle pick, which has popped off for him. He made a really good trade, which has done well for him. So I think what's making Vinny's team is so dangerous is a good trade and 2 really great value picks, along with not messing up the other picks. Whereas other people, we've talked about, you make a pick and you mess up that pick and you're going to have a bad time. Back to where's Luis's team, right? So Luis's team is doing great right now. I'm not knocking Luis's team, but the Etienne pick is a really bad pick. Now I don't blame Luis for that pick because based on last year, Etienne when he took him would have been a good pick. But Etienne is really hurting Luis's team. But the reason Luis's team is doing fine is because he got Stafford off waivers because his quarterback, I think, was Derek Carr. He's not even on the team anymore. He got Stafford off waivers, which is a good waiver wire pickup. He got Hunt off waivers. He drafted Kamara as a value pick, right? And then he didn't miss on Chase. He just took Chase when you're expected to take him, and Chase did well. So I think it's a combination of draft and waivers. But the point that I'm trying to make is I don't think it's all about hitting a home run in round 1. That certainly helps, right? Dad's team has been great because he had a home run in round 1 with Henry Jefferson. But the reason Dad's team is so good is because it's good across the board with Kupp and Love and Mayfield and even Robinson. So I think there's a lot more to it than hitting a home run in round 1. Again, you can't win the league in round 1, but you can lose it. Perfect example is Chris. I think Chris has a really good team, but Chris is completely out of contention because he took McCaffrey in round 1 and McCaffrey didn't play until week 10, 11.
I could disagree though. I think did Lamar go ahead of Mahomes or after?
I mean, anyone who I'll go look, but anyone who took Mahomes as a QB in fantasy football, I just think that was a bad pick. Regardless,
so if Chris just goes Lamar instead of Mahomes, McCaffrey doesn't destroy his season. Is what I'm trying to say. So here, I'll just be nice about it this way. I'm
Josh Allen, Lamar went before him.
Okay, then never mind. So I apologize. Yeah. But I'll just put it this way. I think people like Chris, I think people like Austin, I think people like Cameron, I think people like even Adam, Nolan, and you, and Miles, actually definitely Miles' team with his running backs. So all those people I named, I truly believe this. I think drafted better than me this year. But Vinny and I will probably get into the playoffs. And we got 7 teams who probably drafted better than us. Alex, Nolan, Miles, Cameron, Adam, Chris, Austin. So that's 7 people I named that I truly think drafted better than me. But why am I and Vinny in a chance? It's because you just need the 25 points a week. You can get QBs who finish top 12, but they're going to get 17 one week, 25 the next, 18 one week, 28 the next. You can't do that. That's all the argument was
Right,
like,
but just
yeah,
because a player doesn't work out one year doesn't mean that it wasn't the right pick, though. It's like, and again, I'm not trying to make this about me, but just because like this is the
no,
easiest
for sure.
argument to make is because I know the stats a little better because it's my guy. Dak Prescott was the number one fantasy QB in 2023, right? Sorry,
Yeah.
Sorry, number two. He was the
Allen,
number two
yeah.
fantasy QB in 2023. Allen blew it out, sure, but he was the number two overall quarterback. Coming into this season, he had effectively the same team, same coach, same coordinator, and I got him as QB7 in the draft. That is
But
a
he did
great
lose
pick.
half his offensive line. But yeah, go on.
That is a great pick. Now, it didn't work out because Dak had some injury issues and then eventually got put on IR, so it didn't work out. But like, I think it's a little silly to say like, oh, Dak's not a big pickup. Same with Jordan Love. We were just talking about Jordan Love. Jordan Love was the number 4 fantasy QB last year, and Dad drafted him as like the 8th or 9th QB taken, right? So like, that's a value pick, and he's doing great. Like he's a QB6 right now. He was QB4 last year, and he took
Who
him as
had
like the
Dak
9th or
last year?
10th QB off the board. So
Who had Dak last year?
I think Cam did. Cam or Break.
Cam made the playoffs, right? Who had Jalen last year?
No, Break had Jalen and
So
didn't
Ed
make the playoffs.
didn't make the playoffs. I had Allen made the playoffs. Dak did. Who had Lamar? So that'd be
Miles?
interesting.
I don't know, but I mean,
Miles. Yeah, that's gonna be interesting.
the point, like the
So
point is
I'm
your whole team matters. Like people make a big deal about like, oh, you gotta have a QB in DoD, and yes, QBs are important, but your team
like
matters.
don't go off the
And-
screen. No, what I'm trying to say is like the difference in points though. Look like the average that year is 25. So like there's only 2 guys who had the average of 25. So like in my opinion, that's what I'm trying to say is like when you have the outlier QBs, they make up for. I'm not saying you can't win otherwise because obviously you and Vinny have won very much over the years with the core argument. I'm just trying to say that
Yeah,
when you
I have the
one of those
second most
outliers-
wins in league history with, and I get
For
that
sure.
you have the most wins, so I understand your point, but I'm just saying like I think all strategies work is what I'm saying. Like there's more than one way to win in this league. Just because
Definitely.
I've been very unlucky with having not won a second chip, and so like sure I'll always lose that argument of like who has more chips. It's not me.
No,
But I have
I
the
don't
second
bring up
most wins in league history, and I have the only 1 year in DoD did I ever take a QB in the first 3 rounds. It was Lamar Jackson. He was QB 12, and I didn't make the playoffs. The only year I've gone against my normal strategy of going early round QB, it blew up in my
Yeah, I
face.
feel-
Which is ironic because
I-
Lamar's going to have 3 MVPs after the season, and it just
Yeah,
wasn't the season I had
you got
him. So.
Lamar, those series, and you had yeah, exactly. That's really terrible luck. So like, I'm just saying, I agree that like there's multiple ways to win. I think I was just maybe commenting to the point or like so like if you look at my other league with Chris and Cameron and that league's been around for 10 years now or whatever. I went first Derrick Henry and second Saquon Barkley. I didn't draft the QB till round 6 and it was Joe Burrow. So like I'm agreeing with you, Alex, that like the
But
core
just,
way
just
is
I guess
the
the point that I'm trying to make is like I think one of the scariest teams right now, and like obviously I'm a little biased because he's in my division, right? Is like I think one of the scariest teams right now is Luis, and his quarterback is Stafford, who he got off waivers. If you look at last season from weeks 10 through 17 or whatever it was, Stafford was like
Yeah.
QB 2 or 3 overall in fantasy. He's a slow starter. That's how he's always been. I think he holds back, because he's an older guy, fantasy wise. He's younger than me, and I'm an old man. But and like sports wise, I think he holds back and then turns it on late. So like I think a guy like Stafford is very dangerous at this time of year, even though that's not a guy you had to pick. That's a guy I drafted in like the last round, traded for Cousins, dropped Cousins, then had to trade for Cousins a second time. All to say that I wish right now at this moment I had Stafford on my roster and not Cousins. So.
But like Stafford,
Yeah.
I think Stafford. I mean, we don't have to keep going on and on, obviously. But I'm just saying, like Stafford's average is 16 points a week. So like, if you're very good,
Right,
at,
but
at
but
math
again,
and
so
statistics
go back to
and-
what I just talked about. I talked about
Yeah.
he turned it on at the end of the season last year. So look at just his last 4 weeks. This is after the bye, like after his bye week. 33, 21. There was that one bad week at 9. 35. Like this is what he did last year too. I don't know if there's. Can we see? We can't. So like we can't see a game log. But if you go look at his game log from last year, Mitch, like most of these really like his stats overall are bad, right? Less than 4,000 yards and only 24 TDs. But if you look, the vast majority of that, like yards and TDs, was from weeks 10 on, which is what matters in the fantasy playoffs, right? Your division matches in the fantasy playoffs. So I think a guy who turns it on late is very valuable versus a guy who like comes out of the gate hot and then falls off,
agree,
which
but
is what
even
you're
if you-
thinking Jordan Love might be. Or at the end of the day, as long as you don't have Caleb Williams, you're in a good spot, right? Because this guy's
Yeah, for real. No, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, even with those stats of Stafford, in my opinion, you go 2-2 with those 33, 18, 9, and 30 or whatever. So, in my opinion, in DoD League with those last 4 weeks, that puts you at a 2-2 record. So that's what I'm trying to say is that's 500. If you want, that's not bad. That's still a good start, especially if you
does
go
it though?
500.
Because you're discounting one thing that's very important:
What's that?
fantasy D. Because
Oh,
if you
okay.
look,
Yeah, fantasy.
hold on now.
Fan-
So let's
Sure, I can't count fantasy D, but I think it's
let
more
me scroll
about-
down to find my guy. Hold on. So if I go to Dak, let's see how many points Dak got me. 13, 14, 33, 20, 23, 17, 14. He only had one 30-point week, only
He
two
should
other
be
20-point
1 and
weeks.
6.
He
Yeah,
was,
1
he
and
was an
6 there.
absolute trash can fire. I started him every week up until he got hurt. Remind me again who has the best record in the
7-0.
league. And why is that? Look at this fantasy D. Starts with an 8, boys. 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 10, 9. Fantasy D, baby!
Yeah, no, for sure. But your core was so good. No, that's crazy. You had by far the best draft of that core. So
All right,
that's-
we got to wrap it up, boys. I wanted to end
For
on
sure.
on my fantasy D reference. I hadn't got that in the quota for the week. Sliding that in there. Any last points you guys want to make before we wrap this up?
No, but no last points. I will say I did about 90 minutes of Excel spreadsheet work. So next week I want to get to my topic. So
oh no.
I think
You
it'll be.
should've just interrupted us.
Well, yeah. Next
No,
time, just say something like
That's the point. That's the point I like. That's the point I like. I will say though, yeah, fantasy D is important. It is crazy. I didn't realize how many points, like on average, Adam and I have this year. Like to be averaging close to 100 points per game, and then one of us not making the playoffs. That could really sting.
Yeah, I mean, there's a
But,
strong chance that one of you is on the outside looking in, and I think it's going to be Break. But it's also like,
Yeah.
again, Break's got a lot of star players that haven't had their bye yet, and that's part of it too, right? So
Yeah, it's just it's crazy. But yeah, that's a little taste for next week too. I want to break down per week scoring a little bit. So and it won't be hard to update the numbers that I have.
if Sylvie could just get the dub over Luis next week, that would make my life a lot easier, to be honest with you. But so come on, Sylvie D, start anyone besides Caleb, please. All right, everyone, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, let us know what you want to be
AKA
called.
pick up Herbert Richardson. Who is the other top one?
I mean, pick up
If you're
Dak, he'll
listening,
get
if
you
you're
just as many
listening,
points.
if you're listening right now, pick up all the quarterbacks. So Mitch has to start Tommy DeVito.
Cam also needs a QB this week, so a lot of people will be fighting over QBs this week. Anyway, we got to wrap it up here. Thank you all for listening. Peace out. Have a great weekend. Happy Thanksgiving and all that jazz. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
Adios.
See ya.